USCHO.com.
Welcome to USCHO Weekend Review for Monday, December 11th, 2023. I'm Ed Trefzger along with Jim Connelly and Derek Schooley.
Hey, welcome back, Jim. I mean, Dan Rubin out auditioning for your job, throwing hot takes all over the place, fire emojis. I mean, you've got a lot to live up to this week after Dan. I mean, Steve Metcalf, Dan Rubin's his favorite guy now.
Well, the good thing was I didn't have to wake up at 5:30 in the morning and drive through snow in Vermont. By the time I left Burlington on last Monday morning, the roads were clear, and I drove quickly back and enjoyed the drive much more than I would have in snow-covered roads. But I do appreciate our colleague Dan Rubin for filling in on a last-minute pinch hit once I saw the weather forecast.
With takes like his, I think he was aiming a little higher. He wants to be on WEEI or on 98.5, the Sports Hub there in his hometown.
I think that's probably accurate summation.
Because to be on Boston Sports Radio, you have to have outlandish takes and, kind of that bravado. And when Dan gets wound up, the Boston accent starts to come out more and more. So I think that's what was up.
Here's Dan's only. They don't cover any college hockey on any sports radio, so he'd need to broaden his horizons a little bit.
And he had to say BU and BC were the best teams of the nation, not North Dakota and Denver.
Yeah, I mean, that probably pains him to have to say BC or BU is the best team in the nation.
Well, I know he's also on the Maine bandwagon, and I think we'll talk a little bit about them along the way. But how about North Dakota? They lost twice in overtime, 3-2. In both games to Colorado College. That was probably the toughest part of the weekend. And we're going to get to them in a little bit. But first, the teams that did get at least a split or a win. Number 4, Denver, split with number 13, Western Michigan, a bucket load of goals in both games.
Well, I talked about it. I know, Derek, you don't love the gambling talk, but I had said pound the over on those games, at least the first game, and then both games, tons of goals. I thought for the top 10, there was so many teams were unscathed throughout this weekend. But you mentioned North Dakota, then Denver losing that first game and handily. I think it was 7-3 was the final in that game, and that was one of those scores you get home on Friday night and you're looking at scores and you're like, whoa, wait a minute, it was Western Michigan 7-3, not Denver 7-3. I maybe saw it going the other way, but great job by Western to get that win, and score that many goals. And it does kind of give me some pause about Denver. Maybe the fact that their defense can allow that many. We don't see a lot of national championship defenses that have holes in them or can give up that many goals. Yes, I get it. They score at will. But they got shut down a little bit that night. Their defense in goaltending obviously were not the best. And next thing you know, you're on the wrong side of a 10-goal total. But they bounced back the next night. I guess that is a good sign. But it gives me a couple of questions maybe about where Denver is in the ability to pull off another run to a national championship.
I mean, you've got that Western's got to feel, even though they got the loss, you got to feel pretty good about getting 4 of 6 points out of that, don't you? When you look at it at the end of the day, you got the number 4 team in the nation. You handily beat them pretty well, and then you lose in overtime. Granted, you probably would have liked to win that in overtime, but to get 4 of 6 points, that's a pretty good weekend from that. If anybody, you say, like you always say, you want to get 4 points no matter what. And they got it. And you probably just don't like the way you get it a little bit with giving up as many goals as you give up in 6 goals. But from the Western Michigan standpoint, that's a pretty good weekend.
I got to listen to this next game in the car since I had an early broadcast and we were on the road. And that was number 9 Providence losing to number 2 Boston College. And Providence had been up in that game, and BC battled back a late extra, or I don't think it was extra attacker, but a late goal by Providence got that to within a goal. But a terrific game. And, disappointing, I'm sure, for the Friars, but a good win for BC.
That was a roller coaster of a game. BC, a 2-0 lead. They let that slip. Then Providence, I think it was probably, 11, 12 minutes left, takes the lead, their first lead in the game. But the danger of BC on the power play, BC, one thing, struck right back. That lead lasted for, I'd have to look it up, but less than 30 seconds, I'd say. And then you can't give BC power plays right now. That power play is clicking. And in the way there's these goals that they're scoring, I mean, you're talking about shots from the elbow, one-timers, shots from the point that are picking corners on the net. The skill level on this BC team right now is showing. Good win for BC. Now they'll be off for, I think it's 32 days, and they really won't really have a real practice probably over that span, because at least I think 8 of their players are going to be in World Junior camps. So it's, a situation that you needed that win going into the break. The place was sold out at Conti Forum on Saturday, and I mean really sold out. Sometimes you hear a sellout at BC and there's 2,000 fans came dressed as seats, but this was an absolutely packed house, great environment for two teams that are top 10 battling. It was a fantastic game.
Yeah, you talk about it, and once again, we're getting some really good games and some really good. But I'm just amazed that you're talking right here. The first two series we talked about, there's a lot of scoring going on in college hockey right now, and name some times where you've seen top teams give up this many goals. And granted, they're playing top teams, but usually that leads tighter checking, not as many mistakes. And you're seeing right now a lot of goals given up. I mean, Jimmy, you've been doing this a long time, and obviously I've been coaching, and Ed, you've been coaching. Do you remember seeing this many goals being scored with some top teams playing each other?
I mean, maybe Maine back in 1992, 93 when they were averaging 7 a game. It happens, but then it's interesting because we were looking at some stats again, going back to the Edge podcast, looking at over under numbers, and how many times you would see two teams face off in regular season games, and then those same two teams face off either in their league tournament or the NCAA tournament. And in the high scoring offenses, that would be a 5-4 or a 6-5 regular season game. Then it becomes 2-1 suddenly in the playoffs. So I do agree with you. I feel like goal scoring for the most part is up. I say that having called a 1-0 game this weekend, a 2-1 game last weekend, a 2-2 game this weekend out here in Hockey Eastland, where maybe there's just some teams just play a little bit more defense. But I think that goal scoring across college hockey in general is up, but I don't know that will translate after, say, the first round of the NCAA tournament.
Well, let's take a look at Colorado College and North Dakota. And, we'll put in another plug for our Edge podcast. Did anybody see this coming? I don't know that anybody saw it coming, but I think I did bring up a scenario that could make that happen, and that was some good goaltending for Colorado College, although shots on the second night were pretty even. But, one goaltender can make a whole difference in a situation. I know Derek will attest to that. But I guess a two-part, was it that big a surprise? It probably was, given the spread that was, or the money line that was considered on that. At least the computers and the people in Las Vegas thought so. But what about the hockey people? Do hockey people think that was a big surprise? And should we be concerned about North Dakota?
I mean, is it a big surprise? I don't think at the beginning of the year that you would have thought it was a big surprise. But if you look at the success that Colorado College has had lately, I say that in the wrong way, because they hadn't won in 4 games, and they had tied Arizona State, but they had lost to Western, and their only wins previous to that were they had lost 3 in a row previous, and then they had beat Miami. So yeah, I would say that's a surprise, especially when it's been a long time since they've went up there and won, if I remember correctly from some of the tweets that I saw, that Colorado College hadn't beat North Dakota in a while. So I think from that aspect of it, I think it is a it is kind of a surprise.
I guess I wasn't as surprised on the Friday night win. I feel like sometimes you can go and pull. If I always say that if you're going to pull off a road upset, it's usually going to be on Friday. But then
that's fair
to do it twice. I get it. Both of them coming overtime. North Dakota's having some OT struggles right now. Fair to say. Oh my gosh, yeah, it's the same. It's the same exact thing. Sometimes, and it gets in your head, right? You get into overtime. There's 3-on-3 overtime. Maybe you have an attack mentality, and then next thing you know, you're doing something wrong. One thing breaks down, and you've given up some sort of an odd man rush, or you give up a man that's wide open in front of the net. Boom, the puck goes in. I am impressed for Colorado College. I don't think I'm scared if I'm North Dakota. Yeah, you'd have liked to have gotten more than just 2 out of 6 points in the league standings this weekend. But listen, this North Dakota team is a very good team. They need to just maybe find ways to pot some goals. But as Ed pointed out, goaltending can make the difference in a 2-game series like this. And I think that it really did for Colorado College.
Especially on Friday night when North Dakota put up 34 shots in the game. But here's an interesting number for you, a couple of numbers. Okay, Colorado College had 16 shots on goal in the second period on Friday. They had 0 in the third period, none allowed. Had 1 in overtime, the game-winning goal.
That's crazy.
That's that is for a team I'm giving up 50 shots a night. I mean, that's amazing. I mean, Ed, we were both at RIT 2 weeks ago where we had 3 in one period and 2 in another. So to have 0 shots in a period, I don't know how many times that happens.
Otherwise, in the top 10, teams were either idle or they swept their games. Let's look at Wisconsin, one of the teams that swept. They swept Penn State. The Badgers have won 5 in a row after 3 losses. Now, 2 of those were to Michigan State, and the other one, the first half of a 2-game series with Alaska Anchorage. Have the Badgers righted the ship, and did the ship really need righting, or was it just a little bit of a course adjustment?
I think a little bit of a wake-up call the loss to Anchorage just kind of hit them right now. I think sometimes when you read your press clippings and see, everybody's talking how good you are, they get back up really high in the rankings and they lose to Michigan State. Okay, that's a blip, but then you go out and lose to Anchorage. You right the ship really quickly. And the most impressive thing is in those 5 games, they've only given up 5 goals. They shut out Anchorage, they shut out Ohio State, 3 to Penn State and 1 to Penn State for a team that shoots the puck as much as they do. That's a pretty good weekend defensively. And I think it did. I think they're trending into their tournament here where they've got Air Force and then either Duluth or Northeastern and then dive back into Big Ten with the Notre Dame Fighting Irish. So I think it probably was riding the ship, but I also think it was a little bit of a wake-up call. Or maybe, I don't know, course for, changing course and waking them up a little bit. I think you might be right on that, Ed.
Yeah, I think you nailed it right there, Derek. Sometimes you just need a certain loss. And this is no disrespect to Alaska Anchorage because they've beaten some pretty good teams this season. And they will continue to do so. They're a good team. But sometimes coaches don't mind certain losses because I think that it wakes up a team. And it might not have helped Wisconsin's pairwise, that one loss, but if that can give you some more wins back in your league play, or maybe, as you said, Derek, they're heading into their holiday tournament after the break, and they'll get to try to compete for a trophy and then jump back into Big Ten play. I think that is good timing for when certain losses can come. So I think I never worried that much about Wisconsin in general, but now that they put 5 in a row, allowing so little in terms of goals, I think that they're in a really good position right now.
When you're a coach and you have a loss like that, especially in the first half of the season, is that an opportunity to say, okay, guys, this is what we've been talking about. This is what happens when you don't play the kind of game we want to be playing?
And I also think there's no matter what you say as a coach, and no matter how much you talk, I think there's always sometimes when you're a good team and you're playing somebody that's perceived below you, something that you relaxes within your game. And I think that might have been the case. Like you said earlier, it's a surprise when you do it once, but do it twice is the one. Like I go back to, we played in Michigan when they had Rowinski and Connor, and we had a good team, and we had a 4-2 lead going in the third period, and we lost 5-4. And I walked out of there going, that was our chance. Thank God we played an afternoon game on Halloween the next day, and they walked to the second game, and we won that game. But sometimes the coach, you walk out of there and go, that was our chance to beat a big time team. And Anchorage did it. They couldn't do it twice. And now you're looking at, like you said, something to kind of wake teams up.
I don't think we can discount the job. I don't think anybody is discounting the job that Mike Hastings has done. Wisconsin is always getting good players. The difference this year is the coaching of Mike Hastings and him being a really good college coach. But that also brings to mind Tony Granato. We got news that he tweeted out himself last night, undergoing treatment now for non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. So we certainly are in Tony's corner. Even though it was a tough time at Wisconsin, he is still beloved in his days as a Badger and really well thought of by people all over the place. And we certainly hope the best for him as he goes through treatment.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely. And, that's kind of one of those royal families of hockey. Obviously, Donnie and Cammy and, the whole Granato family is well known around the college ranks, around the pro ranks. And, but he'll have a lot of support. That's one thing we've always seen in college hockey is when somebody's down, they'll get a lot of support in this community. So we wish him the best. It's a battle, but I think that sometimes college hockey players, college hockey coaches are meant to battle. They know how to do it really well.
Yeah, some nice words today from his brother-in-law, Ray Ferraro, about how lucky he has been to know Tony. Well, we're going to take a break now, come back with more, including a look at the ECAC, at the Black Bears of Maine, and whether shootouts make any sense whatsoever in non-conference games. And that's when we continue on USCHO Weekend Review. We continue now with USCHO Weekend Review. Dartmouth, a couple of ties at Arizona State, 4-4 and 1-1. We know that Mullet Arena can be a tough place to play and has been so far this season. So that brings up the question, is Dartmouth a sleeper team in the ECAC? And I would add, is most of the ECAC still asleep right now?
Well, there we go. Ed said he has a little snarky and a little edge to him today, and we didn't see it in the first half. It's out. But to answer your question, I think I watched a little bit of the Friday night game because we play Arizona State this weekend, and I thought Dartmouth looked good. That being said, are they a sleeper in the league? I think they got to prove more than just one weekend because they've had a lot of back and forth, up and down results where they've played a lot of overtime games. If you look at their record, tremendous amount of overtime games.
They've tied 6 times. They've only won twice and lost 3 times. They've got 6 ties already.
And it's been up and down. So you tie, shootout win, overtime win, loss, shootout, loss, overtime tie. I mean, I think what you're going to see is you'll see it firsthand up there at the tournament, Ed. You'll see it right in the Ledger Bank Classic, and what a great event you'll be a part of. But I don't know if you can call him a sleeper yet. I think Reed Cashman's done a great job. He's a good coach. He's on the Rand Pecknell tree, but I don't know if anybody's there yet right now at the ECAC. And you've got Clarkson that's 8-5-1. You got Colgate that's 6-8-2, and Cornell's 6-4-1. But other than that, Union's 8-8. But I mean, you don't have many wins there, and they need to start getting wins. I was watching the Yale broadcast against LIU last night, and they talked about it. They're going to have some opportunities to win some games, and they're going to need to win some games to get their pairwise up there as a league.
Yeah. I think Dartmouth probably is not a sleeper on the national landscape, but I do think they are a sleeper in the ECAC. I don't know that people have the expectation right now for what Reed Cashman, I think, can do. They've only played 7 league games, and I guess most of the teams have only played 6, 7, or 8. I guess eight's the max. But 2, 1, and 4. I mean, four times you finished regulation and overtime in a tie in your league. 6 times you've done it overall. They're right in there, is what I guess I can get at. Is I think that they're in a lot of games. If they start turning a couple of these games in their favor, I see them jumping up as a top 4 team in the ECAC, getting that first round bye, and maybe making it to Lake Placid and causing some problems up there. I don't know if we're going to see them suddenly in the NCAA tournament, but I do think that Reed Cashman, we know, as you mentioned, Rand Pecknold coaching tree, that seems to be now a very successful tree that's starting to get some branches, and I think that any team that takes them lightly will get bowled over. And I'm not sure how Greg Powers felt about the 2 ties down at home. Obviously, he's thinking about pairwise with every single game he plays. Those 2 ties at home don't help him. Doesn't play a lot of road games, so you're trying to get those wins at home. So you maximize the pairwise impact of every game. Those ties don't help him. 80% of 50% is not very good.
Well, Jim, you mentioned the 6, 7, or 8 games, 14 to 16 games left in the league for everybody. That league plays 22 conference games. So a lot can happen over the next little bit. Not a whole lot of non-conference games left for ECAC to bring up the pairwise in general. And as we sit here today, maybe a month away from the pairwise really starting to get very locked in and not moving as much. Not a lot of opportunity for ECAC to move up. And right now, only Quinnipiac is inside the pairwise bubble. Cornell sitting at 21. It's not looking good for that league for more than one team in, unless Quinnipiac does not win the league championship. So, that's my comment about the whole league sleeping. It's been a down year so far for ECAC.
But weren't they in this position last year? And then you ended up sneaking Cornell in. Quinnipiac obviously got in. And then because they lost to Colgate ended up as the third. Right. They ended up with 3 bids. But here we were at Christmas time last year saying, boy, does the ECAC have anybody that's going to make the tournament besides the automatic qualifier? Quinnipiac was on their way up. I don't think we knew that in December, but then Cornell gets there.
Harvard got there.
Harvard got there. Yeah, that's true. So, I mean, you think that you don't have much, and then boom, suddenly, that there's a pretty good representation. We'll see what happens in the second half. If some teams start really running away in the conference games, Quinnipiac obviously is going to do that. We can feel that already. Cornell maybe does that. Maybe it is Dartmouth. Maybe it is Harvard. I don't know who it is in that league that suddenly, hits the gas pedal and goes in the second half in conference play. But you're right. The out of conference games have slipped away. They've gotten beat up, especially by Hockey East teams, too much. And that could cause a little bit of problems end of day.
At this point, the only thing you can do to get yourself up in the pairwise is to have a terrific winning percentage to up your RPI. And again, that's what you're saying. If somebody can run away with things, that can get them up inside there. But that's really the only option left.
You talk about running away with things, Ed. We're looking at our RIT at 16, the place close to your heart. If they do well against Maine, and then the other game in the Ledger Bank Classic and well against Clarkson St. Lawrence, and then you're going to have a speed bump or 2 in the league. But, you do good in those 4 games or do well. What bad English that was. That was my Western Michigan education coming out. You do good. Now, if you do well in those 4 games, we're going to be talking about RIT in that scenario too.
Let's talk about Maine. Now, Jim, I'm not in New England, and neither is Derek. And you're suggesting that people really aren't talking more about the Black Bears. Probably part of that is because there hasn't been a whole lot to talk about up in Orono for a few years. But this team is terrific. I didn't get to watch it, but I got to listen to John Shields do the radio call of Maine versus Bentley on Saturday. first off, hats off to Bentley for really making that a very competitive game till near the end. And what a great job Andy Jones is doing there in Waltham. But Maine, they're probably going to sit somewhere where they were in last week's poll, somewhere around number 8 because of what's been going on above them. But they are terrific. And is the country, is the nation, is the hockey world overlooking them right now?
Yeah. Well, if you're going to be 8th in the poll, but they've been consistently rising in the pairwise, they're 3rd in the pairwise right now. And we've already established that it's fine to talk about the pairwise now. We're past Thanksgiving. This is significant. The NATO brothers are, 2 of the most overlooked great young players in college hockey right now. And it's understandable in, a league like Hockey East, where you have Boston University with Celebrini, and you've got Boston College with basically Team USA on their roster, 7 players that are going to the U.S. national team development camp. I mean, this is, it's so easy to lose a team like Maine. And there's been other good stories. New Hampshire's having a really nice year thus far. UMass is kind of back at 11-4-1, and Providence is having a nice season. But somehow Maine, maybe because it's up in Orono and people just don't get to see it, they're just getting a little bit overlooked in my opinion. By the way, that building, Alfond Arena, sold out for every game for the rest of the season. There's not a ticket left to be found. This will now become a scalper's heaven up there. StubHub and Grubhub, or whoever you want to buy the tickets from, you'll have plenty of opportunities to pay more than face value, because that's how popular this has become up there. This is a really good team, and credit to Ben Barr and what he has done in a real short amount of time to turn this program right back to greatness. This is where you expect Maine to be when you go back to, Sean Walsh and what Tim Whitehead did in his early years. I think of this as a great turnaround, but people do need to be, heads up. This is a real good Maine team.
I don't know if I could say any better. Between you and Dan Rubin talking about Maine the last 2 weeks, this has become almost the Maine podcast. We get in trouble talking about Atlantic hockey too much, but now we're there, and but they well deserve, and they have turned it around. You've got 4 big non-conference games coming up from them right after Christmas, and that'll show, because if you got to do well again like I talked about RIT, they're running out of opportunities, and you want to solidify yourself because their schedule does not get easy when they're diving into the Hockey East bracket of it. Now, they don't play any teams left with the name Boston in front of them, right, which is good, but they still have the UConns of the world and the Northeasterns of the world, and Providence a couple times. So there's, other than and UMass, who was absolutely on fire on Friday night. I turned that game on. I'm like, oh my God.
It was a scorer's paradise.
Oh, and they didn't stop either. So not to take away from Maine and go into UMass, but those are, they have a hard schedule, but no teams with Boston in front of it, no BU, no BC. And if they can do well in those non-conference games, they can start putting themselves, when we talk about buy, sell, locks, not unlock, they may be locked soon if they keep staying up pretty high in the pairwise.
I'm going to call an audible here, talking about Hockey East. One team that is having a real struggle so far this season is UMass Lowell. Over the weekend, a 2-2 tie and a 4-2 loss to Holy Cross. What's going on with the Riverhawks?
They're just banged up, and they will get. I had a chance to talk to Norm Bazin a little bit on Friday, and then one of the parents. So there's players that will come back, and very key players that will come back right after Christmas. They had a couple of players that underwent surgeries to repair things that right at the early parts of the season. They've been missing the entire season. But every time it seems like they're getting back on the road to recovery, another guy goes down. They're going to get a couple of defensemen back after the break. Braden Engum, who was probably the top defenseman who was left in the lineup, he wasn't there this weekend. He was injured. They just need to find a way to get healthy. And sometimes, the injuries just pile up too much. And I know Norm Bazin. I've known him for a long time and worked their radio broadcasts for a number of years. And He's always carried a deep roster, but sometimes, there's a lot of kids in there that you don't expect to be putting in a lot of game situations. Well, he's got players right now that he might not have expected to be in 10 games that are on his power play unit. That's how banged up they've been. So if they can get healthy, they could make a nice little run. They could be a big spoiler team in the second half. They've dug themselves a big hole. But don't forget, Hockey East playoffs is single elimination. So even if they finish, say, 9th, 10th, 11th place, yes, they'll have to go on the road and win a game. Then they have to go on the road again and win a game. But then they're at the Garden. And that's a place where Lowell has made its home over the last 13 years under Norm Bazin.
Are you surprised at the bottom three in Hockey East, Lowell, Merrimack, and Northeastern, Jimmy?
Yes. And Northeastern is another team that has gone through a real bad injury bug this season. Merrimack is probably the team that surprises me the most because they returned so much from that NCAA team a year ago. The team that was an overtime goal away from winning their first Hockey East championship. I thought that team would be one of the top 3 teams in the league. They've just struggled, and sometimes and I haven't talked a lot with Scott Borick this year to know where they are injury wise. I know they had a couple early in the season, but sometimes expectations are very difficult, especially for programs that haven't been there every year. Last year was a real, kind of a kismet type of season for them where they put a lot together. They went through a lot, losing their assistant coach, Josh Siaka, right before the beginning of the season. And I think that the emotion that they played with last year was unprecedented. They went through some ups and downs, but that's another team that I could see in this second half of the season really potentially playing spoiler in Hockey East.
One last item on our agenda today, shootouts in non-conference games. Now, I have talked to coaches around college hockey the last couple of years, and they've gone from not liking it to absolutely despising it for the most part. The rule book says for exhibition in non-conference games, the host institution's conference policy shall be used. So the conferences set the policy, and for independents, they set a policy to all their opponents before the start of the season. But, you're playing a shootout that means absolutely nothing. It's an exhibition. You're risking the opportunity. I think we talked about this early in the season. You're risking an injury to a goaltender or a player. So question number 1 on this, are these even necessary?
So I'm going to take it from a 2020 perspective to a 2023 perspective. Because last time when I played previous, we didn't have a shootout for non-conference games. We ended in a tie. And people would see it in your conference games and they'd go, and then you'd play a non-conference game and you'd end in a tie and they'd be like, why don't you do it? One of our biggest, what is a perceived win, we beat Ohio State. We agreed to do it before the game. We beat Ohio State in a shootout and everybody celebrated like we won. Then we didn't do it for a while because it didn't matter. And people were confused on why we didn't do it. Some games and not all games. So while the Colonials were not playing, they added the rule to have shootouts in all games, which as a non-playing member, I thought, great idea. Now there's no confusion. Nothing happens. All of that. We had one in Alaska. It was the most anticlimactic thing in the world. We won it and we didn't even celebrate it. It was like, okay, we got a red eye. Let's get to the plane. We all skated around the net. I was worried about our goalie pulling a groin. I was all of that you talked about. I thought it was a great idea. I still think it needs to be conveyed to people that it doesn't really matter. But to me, I went from really and thinking it was a great idea to get on every game on the same page to now I'm like, we won the meaningless shootout. And I don't think anybody, even because it's non-conference, even cared.
Yeah, I have kind of a long, drawn-out take.
I just went long. I just went real long.
Yeah,
and Ed's going to be snarky, so
I had the same opinion as you, Derek, as maybe we just need to do it to keep the fans from being confused. But now that I see it, and I've talked to coaches don't put out their best players, their best shootout players in the non-conference shootouts because they don't want anybody to see what moves they might make because they might need that when they need that extra point.
Oh, I don't go that far. I believe that coaches do. I believe that some coaches do. So start there. And then add in the fact that some team their alumni are perceiving that they lost a game. I remember Mike Schaefer, this is going back to, I think it was 2020, actually, Derek. It was a tournament out in Vegas, and I was out there covering it. And Providence beat Cornell in a shootout in the championship game after a 5-minute overtime that didn't decide anything. And obviously, you needed to do something to decide a tournament. But Mike Schaefer had said, I'd rather just sit here and keep playing 20-minute overtimes, whether it's 5-on-5, 3-on-3, somebody will score. The shootout, I'm going to go back on Monday and I'm going to have calls. Oh, too bad you lost. And you lost that game. When it's a tie, I think, and I know this is, I wrote the rundown, so I know what the next question was going to be. If you're going to have them, should they mean something? I think they need to mean something. And I think that, and this is going to be the most unpopular take in the college hockey world. And I will get beat up for this in schools. You're going to be the first one that gets a chance because you're going to hear it live. I think that we need to get closer to what the NHL does. If you win a game in regulation, overtime, or a shootout, you get 100% of a win in the pairwise. If you lose a game in overtime or in a shootout, you get 50% of a win in the pairwise. And I don't care that doesn't all add up to 100%. Yes, you'll have teams get more credit because they got to overtime, but I'm fine with that. Like, find a way to make this all matter. I don't care. I don't want to be doing math of, oh, great. Colorado College got 2 wins this weekend in North Dakota. Oh, but they got 1.2 times 0.67 of a win times 2 because they did it twice. That's so, like, the math is just getting stupid. Like, we've got people that are wonderful mathematicians. Tim Danahy, that everybody seems to now know, used to run college hockey stats. He's available. He's a contractor to college hockey as an advisor, and he does a fantastic job. He could explain how easy it is to replicate the NHL formula in college hockey. That's where I'll throw my soapbox away, but I don't understand why people are so scared of that. We don't have enough time for this. We've already been on 40 minutes and we don't have enough time. Ed's got, like, I am so, like, you almost have to revisit this next week when we have had a slow week or something, because so many things that I could just go and rip apart of what you said. And I
listen, I've been ripped apart on it many times, so I know what they all are.
Like, we're not the end. We want to be close to the NHL, but we're not. I think 3 points in a game makes sense. If you wanted to say, okay, then 60, we mimic the points, 67%, and you count the shootout in a non-conference game, maybe you can get me there. But 100% of a shootout win, no chance in hell.
No, I get it. There's too many purists.
If you want to go, if you want to start at 67% right now and say, okay, 67% overtime win. If you want to go 60-40 in a shootout pairwise, you have to have, we don't play enough games to where we have a uneven amount of, you got to give up the same amount of points every game. And that's why 2 and a 1 makes sense comparatively to 2 and a none, comparatively to 3 in a regulation. I mean, you're talking points, you're talking pairwise. It's all got to be buffered up the same. So, Ed, go jump in. I'm frustrated now. We're going to end. You started off snarky. I'm snarky. We got to save this for this. This could be a whole show, and you could have multiple guests.
Yeah, maybe we'll do that. But I'll just wrap it with this. And my pet peeve, and let me insert here first. I appreciate all the work that sports information directors and statisticians and social media people do.
Oh, yeah, this is mine too. Go, I know where you're going.
When somebody wins a shootout, they have not won the game. It does not all of a sudden become, instead of a 4-4 tie, a 5-4 win. This is what happens, and this is how I always describe it. The game will end in a tie, and we now have a shootout to see who gets the other point in the standings in the league. That's what is going on.
So what do you do in non-conference games? Because there are no points that you're getting. Like, there's not even a way to describe it.
We are going to have a silly, useless exhibition right now for fun. That's how I describe it.
We tied the game, and the Colonials beat Alaska Anchorage in a 3-person exhibition shootout.
Right.
And nobody got hurt. We all went home, and the Colonials made the red-eye home.
Maybe they should give little participation trophies or little ribbons when you win a meaningless exhibition shootout, and you can put those up on the wall in the dressing room.
I mean, we're doing in-season tournaments in basketball worth money, and we're giving out I turned on the other day, and watched basketball players with goggles on celebrating a in-season tournament. I mean, and we're talking about a shootout in non-conference. I mean, there are bigger problems in sports than that. I agree with you. I've got to the point where, but we're in the entertainment business. We're in for the fans. The fans want to see a shootout. They don't want to go, why didn't we just have a shootout? Give them a shootout. I mean, here we go.
Sometimes the fans just want to go home or go out to the local pub, and you're holding them there to watch guys skate up and down the ice and practice penalty shots. Anyway, we'll leave it right there. We could go on.
Well, you want to come watch our Thursday practice? We do it every Thursday, and we have a winner, we have a loser. Come watch our practice.
Oh boy. Well, maybe when I head to Pittsburgh later this season, I'll come down a day early.
I worked under an old coach, Bruce Crowder, who at the end of the shootout on Friday, he had an apple and an onion.
Yeah.
And if you were the winner of the shootout, you got the apple. If you did not score, if you were part of the bunch that did not score at all in the shootout, and you kept going until you finally found somebody that didn't score, you had to eat the onion raw. So, hey, maybe that's what we need to do. Give the losing team an onion, give the winning team some apples, and make that be what the night's all about.
And the winning team gets a juice box too.
Juice box. Wow. I knew when I put this on the rundown that we were going to have a heated debate. I didn't think we were going to go for 15 minutes on it, but we did it. We did it, and we did it well.
And nobody can say we're not entertaining this week. We're in the entertainment.
I'm entertained. Are you not entertained?
We're in the entertainment business.
Well, let's wrap it up. For Jim Connelly, for Derek Schooley, I'm Ed Trefzger, and this has been USCHO Weekend Review.